He found an alien girl with nothing. No clothes, no hope. Just a heartbreaking story. The dense alien forest seemed to pulse with life as Tyler Murphy made his way through the thick undergrowth. His heavy scout armor whirred softly with each step, compensating for the uneven terrain. The foreign sun cast dappled shadows through the canopy of strange, purple-tinged leaves, creating an almost mystical atmosphere. As a veteran ranger of the Terran Expeditionary Force, Tyler had explored dozens of uncharted worlds, but something about this one felt different. The air carried an unusual sweetness, and the local flora exhibited patterns he'd never encountered before. His mission was simple: survey the planet's western continent for potential colonization. So far, he'd found nothing particularly remarkable. Until now. The scene before him stopped him dead in his tracks. Among the twisted roots of what appeared to be an ancient tree sat a naked humanoid woman. Her platinum hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and her fair skin bore a subtle green tint that marked her as definitely non-human. Small scratches and dirt marred her otherwise flawless skin. Tyler's training kicked in as he assessed the situation. She appeared unarmed and in distress, but experience had taught him that appearances could be deceiving. He maintained a safe distance while keeping his weapon holstered. Their eyes met. Hers were large and amber-colored, filled not with fear but with a profound sadness that made his chest tighten. She looked broken, as if hope had abandoned her long ago. "Do you understand me?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle and steady. The alien woman trembled slightly, pulling her knees closer to her chest. Her lips parted, but no sound emerged. She seemed to be struggling with some internal battle. Tyler slowly began removing the outer layer of his armor, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. He unclasped his thermal cloak, standard issue for harsh environments, and held it out. "Here," he said softly, taking a careful step forward. "Let me help you." She didn't flinch or retreat as he draped the cloak over her shoulders. Instead, she watched him with an almost desperate intensity, as if trying to determine if he was real or just another cruel illusion. Several moments passed in silence. The forest around them continued its alien symphony of rustling leaves and distant creature calls. Finally, she spoke. "I don't remember." Her voice was barely above a whisper, carrying a melodic quality despite the pain evident in her tone. The words came out perfectly in standard English, which immediately raised questions in Tyler's mind. He crouched down to her level, maintaining enough distance to not appear threatening. "What's the last thing you do remember?" She clutched the cloak tighter around herself. "Pain. Darkness. Then, here." Her eyes darted around, as if expecting shadows to come alive and grab her. Tyler's jaw tightened. In his years of service, he'd seen enough to recognize the signs of trauma. Someone had done this to her, abandoned her here, stripped of everything, including her memories. "I'm Tyler Murphy, Terran Expeditionary Force." He kept his voice steady, professional yet gentle. "You're safe now. I can help you if you'll let me." She studied him for a long moment, her amber eyes seeming to peer into his soul. "Why would you help me?" The question carried no accusation, only genuine confusion, as if the concept of kindness had become foreign to her. "Because it's the right thing to do," he replied simply. "And because no one deserves to be left alone like this." A small tremor ran through her body, and for a moment Tyler thought she might cry. Instead, she straightened slightly, some invisible weight seeming to lift from her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered. Then, hesitantly, she added, I think I might have had a name once, but it's gone now, like everything else." Tyler nodded thoughtfully. "We'll figure it out together. For now, let's get you somewhere safe. My base camp isn't far from here." He stood slowly, offering his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it, allowing him to help her to her feet. She swayed slightly but quickly found her balance, clutching the cloak tightly around herself. As they began their careful journey through the forest, Tyler couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter would change everything. He'd come to this planet looking for resources and potential colony sites. Instead, he'd found a mystery, one that his conscience wouldn't let him ignore. The trek back to base camp took longer than Tyler anticipated. The alien woman moved with an innate grace despite her obvious exhaustion, but they had to pause frequently as waves of dizziness overtook her. During these breaks, he noticed how she would sometimes stare into the distance, her amber eyes growing, unfocused, as if seeing something beyond the physical world. It happened again as they rested beneath a towering tree with bioluminescent bark. She suddenly gasped, her fingers digging into the moss-covered ground. "What do you see?" Tyler asked softly, keeping his distance but ready to help if needed. Laboratory," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The Genesis Collective, alien scientists in their environmental suits, cold, calculating beings who see life only as equations to be solved." She shuddered. "They called me Subject Aviana." Tyler felt his jaw clench. The Genesis Collective was notorious among human space forces, a mysterious alien civilization obsessed with perfecting other species through forced evolution and genetic manipulation. Despite humanity's best efforts to stop them, their unethical experiments, these aliens continued their work in hidden facilities across the galaxy. "Aviana." He tested the name. "Is that what you'd like me to call you?" She considered this for a moment, then nodded slowly. "It feels right. Not complete, but right." As they resumed walking, Tyler became increasingly aware of Aviana's presence. Beside him, there was something captivating about her movements, the way she studied everything with such intensity despite her traumatic circumstances. An undeniable vitality radiated from her. "You're kind," she said suddenly. "Humans. You're so different from them." "How so?" "You're warmer, more alive." She glanced at him, a hint of color tinting her cheeks, a deeper shade of green. "Your emotions are strong but not frightening. They feel safe. The Genesis aliens, they're cold, clinical. They don't understand feelings, only data and results." Tyler felt an unexpected flutter in his chest at her words. His military training had taught him to maintain professional distance, but something about Aviana made that increasingly difficult. They reached his base camp as the alien sun began its descent, painting the sky in stunning shades of violet and amber. The camp was a standard-issue temporary shelter, but it offered basic amenities and security, a testament to human ingenuity and preparation. "You should rest," Tyler said, activating the shelter's environmental controls. "I'll prepare some food." Another memory seized Aviana. She stumbled, and Tyler caught her instinctively. The moment their bodies connected, an electric current seemed to pass between them. Her skin was surprisingly warm against his, and he could feel her heart racing. "I remember," she whispered against his chest. "The Genesis Collective. They were trying to create something, a perfect being, by combining different species traits, but they could never understand." "Understand what?" Tyler prompted gently, still holding her. "Human emotions, human strength. That's what fascinated them most." Her eyes widened at the revelation. "They kept saying humans were the key, your ability to feel deeply, to adapt, to overcome impossible odds. They wanted to harness that power." Tyler had heard rumors about the Genesis Collective's obsession with humanity. These ancient aliens viewed human emotional capacity as both fascinating and threatening, a power they couldn't comprehend but desperately wanted to control. Aviana looked up at him, their faces now inches apart. "You're not afraid of me?" she observed, wonder in her voice. "Should I be?" The Genesis scientists were. They feared what they couldn't control. Her fingers traced the contours of his armor unconsciously. "But you see me differently." The attraction between them was becoming palpable, a tangible force in the small space of the shelter. Tyler knew he should step back, maintain professional distance, but his body refused to move. "How do I see you?" he asked, his voice rougher than intended. "As a person," she whispered. Not an experiment, not a subject. Her hand found his face, her touch sending shivers down his spine. You make me feel alive. Their first kiss felt inevitable, a perfect fusion of tenderness and passion. Her lips were soft, tasting of something sweet and alien, yet perfectly familiar. Tyler pulled back slightly, searching her eyes for any sign of hesitation. Are you sure about this? He asked, knowing they were crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Aviana's response was to pull him closer. I've never been more sure of anything, she murmured. Since I can remember. What followed was a revelation for both of them. Their connection transcended physical attraction. It became something deeper, a bridge between species built on trust and genuine emotion. The very qualities the Genesis Collective had tried to study and control, yet could never understand. Afterward, as they lay entwined on his sleeping pad, Aviana traced patterns on his chest. The memories, she said softly. They're clearer now, as if you've helped me remember who I am. And who is that? She smiled, the expression transforming her face. Someone who can choose her own path now. Someone who's not just an alien experiment anymore. She paused, considering. The Genesis Collective wanted to understand human strength. They never realized it can't be manufactured or controlled. It has to be freely given, freely received. Tyler pulled her closer, marveling at how natural it felt to hold her. Human strength comes from more than just our bodies or minds, he said. He placed his hand over her heart. It comes from here. That's what terrifies them, Aviana murmured. The Genesis scientists, they've existed for millennia, advanced beyond physical limitations, but they've lost something essential. They see humanity's emotional depth as both primitive and powerful. They can't understand how beings they consider less evolved could possess something they lack, and that's why they experimented on you, Tyler said. To try to understand it. She nodded against his chest. They thought that by combining different species traits with human emotional capacity, they could create beings they could control, while harnessing that power. But they didn't realize. She lifted her head, amber eyes shining with newfound clarity. They didn't realize that human emotions can't be controlled or replicated. They can only be experienced, shared, chosen. Tyler traced the elegant curve of her jaw, noting how her green-tinged skin seemed to glow in the shelter's dim light. You're not their experiment anymore, he said. You're free to choose your own path. Because of you, she whispered. Because you showed me what the Genesis Collective could never understand. That true strength comes from connection, from trust, from... She hesitated, then continued softly. From love. The word hung between them, charged with meaning. Tyler knew his superiors would have strong opinions about his growing attachment to a former Genesis experiment, but in that moment, holding Aviana, he couldn't bring himself to care about regulations or protocols. The Genesis Collective has it backwards, he said. They think emotions make us weak, vulnerable. They don't understand that our feelings, our capacity to care, to love, to fight for what matters, that's what makes humanity unbeatable. Aviana's smile held a hint of mischief. Is that why? You humans have such a reputation across the galaxy for being unstoppable when you care about something. Damn right, Tyler grinned. We're stubborn that way. Their laughter filled the shelter, a sound of pure joy that defied the clinical coldness of the Genesis Collective's laboratories. In that moment, they were more than their species or circumstances. They were simply two beings choosing to connect, to trust, to feel. As night settled over the alien forest, Tyler and Aviana talked for hours, sharing stories and discoveries. She told him more about the Genesis Collective's facilities, their endless experiments in trying to understand and harness human emotional capacity. He shared tales of humanity's expansion into space, their determination to explore and connect with other species despite all obstacles. Your people never give up, do they? Aviana asked, admiration clear in her voice. "It's not in our nature," Tyler replied. "When we believe in something or someone, we fight for it no matter the odds." Aviana propped herself up on one elbow, her platinum hair cascading over her shoulder. The Genesis scientists used to discuss that. They called it the human paradox. How your species could be simultaneously so fierce in battle, yet so capable of compassion. They couldn't reconcile those traits because they're trying to analyze something that can't be measured, Tyler said, running his fingers through her silken hair. Human nature isn't about logic or data. It's about heart. A sudden thought seemed to strike Aviana. That's why their experiments always failed, she said, eyes widening. They were trying to replicate human emotional capacity through genetic manipulation and controlled environments. But you can't manufacture genuine feelings. No, Tyler agreed, pulling her closer. You can only experience them naturally, like this. Their second kiss was different from the first, slower, deeper, filled with growing understanding. Aviana's body molded perfectly against his, their connection transcending physical attraction to something more profound. When they finally parted, Aviana's amber eyes held a new light. The Genesis Collective thinks they're superior because they've evolved beyond emotional need, she whispered, but they're wrong. They've lost something precious. Something your people never forgot. And what's that? The power of choice, of free will, of deciding who to trust, to. She paused, then continued softly. Who to love. Tyler felt his heart swell at her words. In the short time since finding her naked and afraid in the forest, she had transformed from a victim of alien experimentation into someone discovering her own strength through human connection. Whatever happens, he promised, you'll always have that choice now. The Genesis Collective can't take that away. Aviana's smile was radiant. No, they can't. Because now I understand what they never could. That true strength isn't about control or perfection. It's about being human enough to feel, to risk, to love. As they drifted to sleep in each other's arms, Tyler realized he'd found something far more significant than a survivor of alien experiments. He'd found someone who saw humanity's greatest qualities not as weaknesses to be studied, but as strengths to be embraced. The pre-dawn hours cast long shadows across Tyler's base camp as he monitored the perimeter sensors. Something had triggered the outer defensive grid, something trying very hard not to be detected. His military training screamed that this was no random wildlife activity. Aviana stirred on the sleeping pad, her platinum hair catching the dim light of the monitoring screens. The past few days had transformed her from the broken creature he'd found in the forest into someone increasingly confident and self-aware. Each intimate moment they shared seemed to unlock more of her memories, though many remained fragmented. They're here, aren't they? She whispered, her amber eyes reflecting an ancient fear. Tyler nodded grimly, checking his tactical display. 3 Genesis hunter ships, using some kind of advanced cloaking technology. They're setting up a containment perimeter. He moved to his weapons locker, retrieving his combat gear. We have maybe 20 minutes. Aviana rose gracefully, now wearing a spare set of his base clothing that somehow made her look both vulnerable and formidable. The Seeker, she said, the name emerging from her recovered memories. The Genesis Collective's elite hunters. They never let an experiment escape. Investment. Tyler spat the word with disgust as he helped her into a protective vest. That's how those alien bastards see you. Just another specimen in their endless quest to understand humanity. Aviana's fingers traced the vest's edges with surprising familiarity. They've spent millennia trying to replicate human emotional capacity through science. Their seekers are their masterpiece. Hunters engineered to be emotionless. Perfect predators. A proximity alert chirped softly. Tyler checked the readings and cursed under his breath. 15 biosignatures using some kind of thermal masking technology. These aren't standard retrieval units. Aviana's expression hardened. No, they're the elite. Beings modified to be devoid of all emotion, all weakness, Everything that makes humans so fascinating to the collective. She stepped closer to Tyler, her scent filling his senses. I won't let them take me back. I can't be their experiment. Again, you won't be, Tyler promised, checking his pulse rifle's charge. But we need a plan. My armor can handle their weapons, but then give me a weapon too. Her voice carried steel now. The memories, I know how to fight. They made sure of that. Tyler hesitated only briefly before handing her his backup pistol. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, sending familiar electricity through his body. Even now, facing imminent danger, their connection hummed with undeniable power. Stay close, he instructed, activating his armor's combat systems. We'll head for the emergency tunnel I dug when I first set up camp. It leads to... The first explosion rocked the shelter, cutting off his words. A strange, shimmering mist followed, filling the air with an otherworldly glow. Tyler's helmet automatically compensated, giving him a clear view of the chaos. Through the mist, he saw Aviana move with preternatural grace, her enhanced genetics evident in every fluid motion. She fired 3 precise shots, dropping the first seeker who breached the shelter's entrance. The being fell silently, its crystalline armor shattering. Impressive, Tyler commented, taking down 2 more seekers with controlled bursts from his rifle. Their alien bodies crumpled with an unsettling grace, like falling statues. You should see what else I can do, Aviana replied, unexpected heat in her voice, rolling behind a storage crate as return fire peppered their position. The Genesis weapons fired strange bolts of energy that seemed to distort the air itself. They fought in perfect synchronization, as if they had trained together for years instead of meeting days ago. Aviana's enhanced abilities complemented Tyler's combat experience, creating a deadly dance that the emotionless seekers couldn't predict. They don't understand, Aviana called out between shots. Human unpredictability. It's not a weakness, it's your greatest strength. Tyler grinned behind his helmet. As he dropped another seeker, Tyler smirked. Damn right. Can't calculate what you can't comprehend. But the Genesis hunters were relentless, their modified bodies pushing forward with machine-like precision. A neural disruptor blast caught Tyler's shoulder, temporarily scrambling his armor systems. He stumbled, and Aviana immediately moved to cover him, taking a grazing hit in the process. The tunnel, she gasped, helping him regain his balance. Her touch, even through his armor, sent waves of electricity through his body. Now they retreated efficiently, covering each other's movements. Tyler triggered the shelter's self-destruct sequence as they reached the concealed tunnel entrance. The explosion would buy them precious minutes. Inside the narrow passage, their bodies pressed close as they moved swiftly through the darkness. Tyler's armor provided the only illumination, casting Aviana's features in an ethereal glow. The intimate proximity, even in danger, kindled their ever-present attraction. You're bleeding, he noticed, seeing the wound on her arm. Already healing, she replied. Indeed, the injury was visibly closing, her enhanced biology at work. One of their improvements, she continued. But they never understood what truly makes humans resilient. They emerged from the tunnel into a small clearing, 2 kilometers from the camp. The sound of pursuit echoed behind them, muffled but persistent. The seekers' emotionless determination made them terrifying hunters, but also predictable. There's a backup transport hidden nearby, Tyler said, leading the way. We can... Aviana suddenly pulled him into a fierce kiss, her body melting against his armor with desperate passion. Thank you, she whispered against his lips, for showing me what it means to be more than an experiment, for making me feel... human. Aviana. They want me alive, she said, her amber eyes blazing with determination. But they'll kill you without hesitation. They see human emotion as a contamination that must be eliminated. Tyler realized what she was planning. No, we fight together or not at all. That's the human way. A radiant smile crossed her face. Your species is gloriously stubborn. Her hand caressed his armored cheek. But this time, you need to trust me. I'm not running away. I'm choosing to fight. With everything they gave me and everything you taught me. The sounds of pursuit grew closer. Aviana's eyes began to glow with an inner fire as she stepped away from Tyler. They engineered us to be perfect, she said, her voice taking on an otherworldly resonance. But they never understood what perfection truly means. They gave me enhanced abilities, thinking they could control them. But you gave me something stronger, human passion, human love. Tyler watched in amazement as her skin began to shimmer, the green tint becoming more pronounced. The Genesis Collective's experiments had created something far beyond their cold calculations. The first Seekers burst into the clearing, their crystalline armor glinting in the alien moonlight. They moved with inhuman precision, weapons raised. And yet, they hesitated at the sight of Aviana, their programmed certainty wavering for the first time. Subject: Aviana, one called out in a voice devoid of emotion. Your resistance is illogical. Return to containment. The human's emotional influence must be purged. The only thing that needs purging, Aviana's voice carried across the clearing, is your arrogance in thinking you could control what you don't understand. What happened next defied Tyler's combat experience. Aviana moved like liquid starlight, her Genesis-enhanced abilities now fueled by something the aliens had never factored into their equations: human passion. The Seekers' weapons proved useless as she flowed between their shots, her movements a lethal dance of power and grace. Tyler provided covering fire, preventing the hunters from coordinating their attacks. But truthfully, Aviana barely needed the help. She was magnificent, terrible, beautiful, everything the Genesis Collective had wanted. But nothing they could control. Impossible, one Seeker stated flatly, its emotionless voice finally showing a crack of uncertainty. Human emotional responses should inhibit combat efficiency. That's where you're wrong, Tyler called out, dropping another hunter, with precise shots. Human emotions don't make us weaker, they make us unstoppable. Aviana's laugh rang out, full of joy and fierce determination. He's right. You tried to create the perfect being by removing emotions. But you never understood. Feelings aren't a flaw to be corrected. They're a power to be embraced. In less than 2 minutes, it was over. The Genesis hunters lay defeated, their perfect forms shattered by the very combination they had tried to create. Enhanced abilities powered by human passion. Aviana stood in the center of the clearing, breathing heavily but unhurt. She turned to Tyler, uncertainty flickering across her features. "Are you afraid of me now?" she asked softly. "After seeing what they made me?" Tyler stepped forward, deliberately deactivating his armor's combat systems. "They didn't make you," he corrected, pulling her into his arms. "They tried to create a weapon, but instead they gave birth to something beautiful. A bridge between species. Everything you are now, you chose to become." Relief flooded her face as she melted against him. Their lips met in a kiss that spoke of survival, triumph, and impossibilities. The heat between them was more intense than ever, strengthened by the battle they had just survived together. "We should go," she murmured eventually, though her body remained pressed against his. "They'll send more." "Let them," Tyler replied, leading her toward the hidden transport. "We'll be ready. Together." As they prepared for departure, Aviana paused, looking back at the fallen Seekers. They wanted to understand human strength by removing emotion from the equation, she mused. They failed because they couldn't comprehend that love, passion, desire, these aren't weaknesses. They're the source of humanity's greatest power. Tyler understood. The Genesis Collective had tried to engineer the perfect being through cold, science, and calculation. Instead, they'd created someone who had discovered true perfection through human connection and freely chosen love. "Where should we go?" he asked as they boarded the transport, his hand finding the small of her back. Aviana's smile held both mischief and determination. "Everywhere. Anywhere. There are others like me out there. Experiments, hybrids, lost souls. They deserve to Know they can be more than what the Genesis Collective intended. They deserve to experience what you've shown me. As the transport lifted off, Tyler realized he'd found far more than a naked alien girl with a heartbreaking story. He'd found a revolution in the making, a chance to show the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its weapons or technology, but in its capacity to feel, to love, to transform others through connection. The transport ship hummed through hyperspace, its stealth systems masking their signature from Genesis pursuit vessels. Tyler sat at the controls, occasionally glancing at Aviana, who stood by the observation window. Her silhouette was ethereal against the streaming lights of faster-than-light travel, her enhanced beauty made more striking by the confidence she now carried. "They're analyzing the battle data," she said suddenly, turning to face him. "The Genesis Collective's leaders. They can't comprehend how their perfect seekers were defeated." Tyler engaged the autopilot and moved to join her. "Let them analyze. They'll never understand." "But they're obsessed with understanding." Aviana's amber eyes held new knowledge. "That's what makes them truly dangerous. Their defeat has only intensified their fascination with human emotion." She pressed her palm against the cool, transparent steel. "I can feel their calculations, their desperate attempts to quantify what happened. They're reviewing every moment, every interaction between us, trying to understand how human passion could enhance their genetic modification instead of inhibiting it." Tyler stepped behind her, his hands finding her waist. The contact sent familiar electricity through both of them. Some things can't be measured or calculated. Aviana leaned back against his chest, her body fitting perfectly against his. That's what terrifies them most. For millennia, the Genesis Collective has based everything on precise calculations, on cold logic, but human emotions. She turned in his arms, her eyes blazing with intensity. "You defy their equations. Your passion, your determination, your capacity for love. It transforms everything it touches." "Including you," Tyler murmured, tracing the elegant curve of her jaw. Her skin shimmered slightly at his touch, a reminder of her enhanced nature. "Especially me," Aviana whispered, her voice husky. "They designed me to be their perfect specimen. But you showed me how to be more. Every time we touch, every moment we share, it awakens something they never planned for." The ship's sensors suddenly blared a warning. A massive vessel had appeared in their path, its design unlike anything in human space. A Genesis Collective command ship. Its crystalline structure pulsed with alien energy. "They're here," Aviana whispered. But there was no fear in her voice now, only determination. "The Collective's High Council itself. They've come to witness their failed experiment firsthand." The ship's communication system crackled to life, projecting a holographic image of three beings. Their forms were almost geometric in their perfection, their faces devoid of any emotion. Subject: Aviana. The central figure spoke in precisely modulated tones. "Your performance exceeds all projected parameters. The human's influence has produced unexpected results." Tyler stepped forward protectively, but Aviana placed a restraining hand on his arm. The touch sent waves of warmth through both of them, even in this tense moment. "I'm not your subject anymore," she declared, her voice carrying new authority. "And what you call unexpected results is something you'll never understand through analysis." "Explain," the alien leader demanded, its perfect features showing the first hint of frustration. "Our calculations indicate that human emotional responses should decrease combat efficiency by 47.3%. Instead, your capabilities have increased exponentially." Aviana laughed, the sound rich with genuine joy. "That's because you're trying to measure the immeasurable. Human emotion isn't a variable in an equation. It's a force that transforms everything it touches." She turned to Tyler, her eyes softening with obvious affection. "Your people spent centuries trying to create the perfect being through genetic manipulation and emotional suppression. But true perfection isn't about control. It's about connection." Tyler felt his heart swell at her words. Even facing the Genesis Collective's leaders, Aviana radiated a confidence born not from their modifications, but from something they could never engineer: love. Impossible, another council member stated. Human emotional attachment creates vulnerability. Yet your bond with this human has somehow enhanced your capabilities beyond our highest projections. Because love isn't weakness, Tyler spoke up, his hand finding Aviana's. It's strength, something your kind forgot long ago in your quest for perfect logic. The council members exchanged glances, their crystalline features reflecting confusion. We require direct observation, the central figure announced. Subject: Aviana and the human specimen will be brought aboard for analysis. Like hell we will, Tyler growled, reaching for his weapons. But Aviana's touch stopped him again. No, she said, a mysterious smile playing across her lips. You want to understand? Then watch. She turned to Tyler, her body pressing against his with deliberate intent. Show them what they can never calculate, she whispered, pulling him into a passionate kiss. The energy between them exploded like a supernova. Aviana's enhanced biology responded to their connection, her skin beginning to glow with an inner light that filled the transport's cabin. The Genesis leaders watched in fascinated horror as their perfect specimen transformed, through pure emotion. Impossible, they muttered collectively. The energy readings, the biological responses, they defy all known parameters. When Aviana finally broke the kiss, she turned back to the council, her body still intimately pressed against Tyler. This is what you'll never understand, she said, her voice steady. Human passion isn't a flaw to be corrected or a variable to be controlled. It's the most powerful force in the universe. The readings indicate a complete neural reorganization, one council member observed clinically. The human's influence has somehow optimized our modifications beyond theoretical limits. Because love changes everything, Aviana declared. It doesn't make us weaker. It makes us transcend your limited definitions of perfection. The council's perfect composure began to crack. Their geometric features, so meticulously designed, now showed the first signs of genuine emotion: fear. This connection, the central figure spoke carefully, violates all known principles of evolutionary advancement, yet the evidence is undeniable. Subject: Aviana has achieved a state of optimization we have sought for millennia. Through primitive human emotion, another council member added, their voice tinged with disbelief. Our centuries of genetic engineering, surpassed by simple feelings. Tyler couldn't help but smile. Not so primitive now, is it? Aviana's hand traced soft patterns on his chest, each touch sending visible waves of energy through her enhanced form. You wanted to create the perfect being by removing emotion, she said, her voice thick with conviction. Instead, you created vessels, waiting to be filled with something greater: human love. The transport's cabin thrummed with power as Aviana demonstrated exactly what that meant. Her body, designed by the Genesis Collective to be the peak of engineered perfection, now pulsed with the raw energy of human passion. Every touch between her and Tyler sent readings into chaos, their instruments struggling to process what was unfolding before them. The energy signatures are unprecedented, one leader observed. The human's proximity appears to enhance all designed capabilities by factors we cannot calculate. Because you're still trying to measure it, Aviana laughed, the sound full of joy and triumph. You can't quantify love. You can't control it. You can only surrender to it. The council members conferred in silence, their perfect features showing increasing distress as they absorbed the data. Finally, the central figure spoke again. This development requires extensive study. The combination of our genetic enhancements and human emotional capacity has created something beyond our projections. You will submit to further analysis. No, Aviana interrupted, her voice firm, tinged with something unexpected. Pity. You still don't understand. I'm not your experiment anymore. What I share with Tyler isn't something you can study or replicate. It has to be freely given, freely received. Tyler pulled her closer, his touch sending new waves of energy rippling through her enhanced form. You're perfect beings, you're seekers. They're just empty shells, he said. But Aviana, she's alive, really alive. Because she chose to feel, to love. The council's composure cracked further. But the potential, one of them insisted. The power isn't yours to control, Aviana finished. This is humanity's gift, the ability to transform through love, and it's something your kind sacrificed long ago in pursuit of cold perfection. She turned to Tyler, her amber eyes blazing. Show them, she whispered, and then she kissed him. The energy that exploded between them this time was even more intense. Aviana's enhanced biology, designed to be the peak of Genesis engineering, responded to human passion in ways her creators had never predicted, never even imagined. The council's instruments overloaded, their perfect calculations shattered. Beneath the sheer force of emotion, when they finally parted, Aviana's skin glowed like starlight. This is what you'll never have, she told the stunned council. Not through study, not through engineering, only through choosing to feel, to risk, to love. The Genesis leaders' perfect facades had completely crumbled. For the first time, their crystalline faces reflected something new, a mixture of awe, fear, and desperate longing. We cannot allow this power to exist uncontrolled, the central figure stated. But its voice wavered. The implications, Tyler interrupted, stepping forward, are exactly what humanity has been trying to show you all along. Real strength doesn't come from control. It comes from connection. Aviana's laughter rang through the cabin, rich with joy and triumph. You're perfect beings. Your emotional suppression, they're all based on fear, she said. Fear of feeling, fear of connecting, fear of love. But look at what that fear has cost you. The transport's sensors suddenly registered multiple new signatures. Human ships were dropping. Out of hyperspace, the cavalry had arrived. This isn't over, the council warned, but their perfect symmetry was now noticeably disturbed. The power you represent isn't power at all, Aviana said softly. It's love. Something you'll never understand until you remember how to feel. As the Genesis command ship retreated from the approaching human fleet, Aviana turned to Tyler. Her enhanced form practically vibrated with energy, her amber eyes blazing with emotion. They'll be back, she whispered against his lips. They're obsessed now, desperate to understand what we share. Tyler pulled her closer, feeling the incredible power their connection generated. Let them try, he murmured. Some things can't be calculated or controlled. No, Aviana agreed, molding herself against him. They can only be felt. 6 months later, Tyler and Aviana stood on the observation deck of the human diplomatic station New Dawn, watching an unprecedented sight unfold below. Genesis collective ships, once flawless in their crystalline symmetry, docked alongside human vessels. Their perfect forms now showed subtle variations that would have been unthinkable before. They're changing, Aviana murmured, her form glowing softly in the starlight. The council's exposure to our connection that day, it started something they couldn't control. Tyler wrapped his arms around her from behind, feeling the familiar surge of energy their touch always ignited. A revolution of feeling, he said. Then he smirked. Who would have thought that finding a naked alien girl in the forest would end up transforming an entire civilization? Aviana turned in his embrace, her amber eyes dancing with mischief. Are you complaining about how things turned out? Not a chance. Tyler grinned, pulling her even closer. Their bodies fit together perfectly. A harmony of human passion and enhanced biology that still generated readings Genesis scientists couldn't explain. Look at them, Aviana said softly, gesturing to the Genesis ships. Their perfect symmetry is breaking down. Every vessel shows unique patterns now. Individual variations they're starting to feel, to express themselves. It was true. The once identical Genesis ships now displayed delicate, shifting crystalline patterns, reflections of their crew's emerging emotions. Reports from across the galaxy confirmed it. Genesis beings were experiencing feelings for the first time in millennia. Their perfect society was transforming, its long-suppressed emotions finally awakening. The Council's trying to maintain control, Tyler observed, tracing slow patterns on Aviana's arm, making her skin shimmer. But you can't stop an emotional awakening once it starts. No, Aviana agreed, pressing closer. They made that mistake with me. Trying to control feelings only makes them stronger. Her voice turned husky. You taught me that. Tyler remembered finding her that day. Naked, afraid, stripped of everything but her core being. Now, she radiated confidence and power, a perfect fusion of Genesis engineering and human passion. She had become something unprecedented, a bridge between cold perfection and burning emotion. The latest reports are fascinating, she continued, though her hands had begun their own exploration of his chest. Genesis beings are seeking out human contact, desperate to understand what they've been missing. Their perfect society is becoming beautifully imperfect. They're learning, Tyler murmured, his breath hitching as Aviana's touch sent waves of energy through him. What we've known all along. That real strength comes from embracing our feelings, not suppressing them, she finished. A soft chime interrupted them. A new data stream from the Genesis ships. Aviana laughed in delight. The Seekers, they're perfect hunters. They're experiencing emotions for the first time. The Council is in chaos trying to handle it. What kind of emotions? Tyler asked, though his focus was increasingly on Aviana's proximity. Everything, she said, voice thick with wonder. Joy, curiosity, desire. Her amber eyes met his, full of unmistakable heat. Love. The station's observation windows automatically tinted as their passion ignited the familiar energy field that accompanied their most intimate moments. Even after 6 months, their connection had only deepened, each touch still electric, still transformative. The Council members themselves are changing, Aviana whispered against his lips. Their perfect geometric forms, becoming more organic, more human. They're remembering how to feel. Thanks to you, Tyler murmured, pulling her into a slow, searing kiss. You showed them what they'd been missing all along. Thanks to us, Aviana corrected, her body practically humming with energy. What we share, it's what they've been searching for all along. Not perfect control, but perfect connection. Beyond the window, another Genesis ship arrived, its crystalline structure showing unprecedented organic curves. The transformation of their society was accelerating, spreading like wildfire through their once rigid civilization. They're calling it the Great Awakening, Aviana said, her voice rich with emotion. Genesis beings across the galaxy, remembering how to feel. Tyler chuckled, shaking his head. All because a human soldier found a naked alien girl in the mine forest and chose to show her kindness instead of fear. Aviana smiled, eyes shimmering with love. You weren't just naked, he continued. You were stripped of everything. Hope, memory, identity. But underneath all their experiments and modifications, I was waiting, she finished, her voice raw with emotion. Waiting for someone to show me that feelings aren't flaws. That love isn't weakness. She pressed herself against him. That humanity's greatest strength isn't in its weapons or technology, but in its heart. The energy field around them intensified, a visible manifestation of their connection that still defied Genesis calculations. Their love had become a beacon, a force breaking through the cold, sterile confines of the Genesis collective, drawing them toward something more, something real. Aviana exhaled softly, a smile curving her lips. The Council just sent a new proposal. Tyler raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. They want to establish permanent diplomatic relations? Not to study emotions anymore, she murmured, her hand sliding over his chest. But to learn how to feel them. Tyler grinned. Now that's progress. You tell them? Tyler asked, his hands tracing the curves that Genesis engineering had made. Perfect, but human love had made real. Aviana's smile turned mischievous. I told them that feelings can't be learned from observation or analysis. They have to be experienced. Outside, the Genesis ships continued their transformation. Crystalline, structures becoming more fluid, more alive. Like Aviana herself, they were evolving beyond their creator's rigid designs, guided by awakening emotions. We're receiving reports from across Genesis space, she continued, her voice growing husky. Their perfect society is becoming wonderfully imperfect. Beings are choosing to feel, to connect, to love. She turned to him, amber eyes glowing. All because one human showed me that being stripped of everything doesn't mean being broken. It means being ready for transformation. Tyler pulled back just enough to meet her gaze. From nothing to everything, he mused. The girl I found, in the forest with nothing but a heartbreaking story, has everything now. Aviana finished, her enhanced form shimmering with joy and desire. Because you showed me that true perfection isn't about control. It's about choosing to feel everything, fully, freely. Their embrace was interrupted by a soft chime, another diplomatic message from the Genesis Council. But this one was different. The once rigid geometric patterns of their communications had softened, flowing with organic curves, and the message itself contained something unprecedented. Emotion. They're thanking us, Aviana said wonderingly, reading the display, not for data, not for analysis, but for showing them what they had forgotten. She laughed softly, shaking her head. The ability to feel, to choose, to love. Tyler grinned. Took them long enough to figure that out. They say humanity's primitive. Emotions are actually the height of evolution, she added, amused. Only had to wait a few millennia, Tyler teased, pulling her back into his arms. Aviana's voice softened. Some things are worth waiting for. Her body hummed with energy as she traced her fingers over his chest. Like finding someone who sees past what you've lost, to what you could become. Beyond the window, more Genesis ships arrived. Each, one displaying increasingly organic patterns, evolving as their society awakened. And it had all started with a simple act of kindness. A soldier offering his cloak to a naked, hopeless alien girl. What happens next? Tyler asked, though the way he held her suggested he already knew the answer. Everything. Aviana smiled, her amber eyes blazing with love and possibility. We keep showing them that true strength comes from feeling, not suppressing. That real perfection includes flaws. That love. She pressed herself closer. Love is the most powerful force in the universe. As their lips met, the energy field around them pulsed with unprecedented intensity. Through the tinted observation windows, they could see the Genesis ships responding, their crystalline structures resonating with the pure emotion radiating from the station. Aviana gasped softly, pulling back just enough to whisper against his lips. Look, she breathed. They can feel it. All of them. The power of genuine emotion, of real connection. Her enhanced form shimmered with joy and desire. We're showing them what they've been missing all along. The diplomatic station's sensors were probably going crazy, trying to measure the unmeasurable, the power of human love combined with Genesis enhancement. But that was the point. Some things couldn't be measured or controlled, only felt, only embraced. From nothing to everything, Tyler murmured, holding the woman who had transformed from a naked, hopeless experiment into a beacon of change for an entire civilization. You've come a long way from that forest floor. We've come a long way, Aviana corrected, her body melding perfectly against his, and we're just getting started. She was right. Their story had begun with nothing, no clothes, no hope, just a heartbreaking tale of alien experimentation. But through human kindness, passion, and love, it had become something more. A revolution. Of feeling. a transformation that was reshaping an entire civilization. Outside, the Genesis ships continued their beautiful evolution. Inside, Tyler and Aviana sealed their triumph with a kiss that sent waves of energy cascading through the station. Their love, impossible, unprecedented, perfect in its imperfection, had become more than a personal connection. It had become a beacon. Beacon of hope, of awakening, of a future where emotion was no longer a weakness, but a strength. Because in the end, the naked, hopeless girl from the forest had found not just clothes and shelter, but love that transcended species and engineering. And the human soldier had found not just a mission, but a partner who proved that humanity's greatest strength was its capacity for emotional connection. Together, they had turned a heartbreaking story into something magnificent. Testament to the power of human love to change not just individuals but entire civilizations. The Genesis Collective's perfect society was becoming beautifully, wonderfully imperfect. And it had all started with a choice. A human choosing kindness over fear, love over logic, emotion over perfection. As Tyler and Aviana stood on the observation deck, watching the galaxy transform through the power of awakened emotions, they knew. Their story was far from over. It was just beginning. A new chapter in the endless tale of humanity's greatest gift, the ability to feel, to connect, to love, without boundaries or limitations. The heartbreaking story had become a love story. The naked alien girl had become a bridge between worlds, and humanity had once again proven that its so-called primitive emotions were actually the most advanced force in the universe.